ideal co-founder for me is one that has complementary skill set of maybe technology or finance, something that we can both work together on and see how we can collaborate with our individual knowledge into building something new. But beyond that is also someone you have some chemistry with. So it should be somebody you trust. And not just a friend because it's a friend, but someone you can trust and somebody that you know has got your back. Somebody that you know that if the business goes down, you can sit down with and have a conversation about the success or the failures of your business and look at the next opportunity. A true friend. That is your ideal co-founder. Once you achieve that, the next set of people you bring should be professionals. They should be people that are experts in their skill that will complement the effort of you and your co-founder in growing the business. Also, that was how I went about identifying my co-founders. And then that spawned into creating the work culture that became the organogram for the business. So we started out with getting Folake. Folake is a very experienced people operations manager. She joined us very early on. I couldn't pay her all the salaries that she could have earned, but what I gave in return was stock options and equity in the business, and a promise for a precise pay we would make in the future. Mm-hmm. And then what she did was she came on board, and then I wanted a particular work culture. So I used to say to her earlier on when we started out that I wanted my businesses to look like, I wanted people to walk into the office and feel like they're in a Google office or a Facebook office, where it's a fun place to work from. It's a place where you're relaxed. I mean, I remember when she first came in, it wasn't easy for her to hear people call her by name. She was used to people saying, Madam Folake. I was like, no, it's not going to happen here. This is the place where we will be straight with ourselves. We'll be open with ourselves. We can call ourselves by first name. And so now the man can call me Onyeka, and I can call him Moses. And this and the next person can call me by my name, and there's mutual respect. But beyond that was a very relaxed work culture that will allow us to achieve the goal of working with people that you consider like family because of the way the environment has positioned you to achieve the goals you're after. So that in itself started building out our work culture. We created our core values. And so in recruiting, to fill out our organogram, our core values will sit on humility, hunger, having fun, integrity, people smart, excellence, and speed. Now, what we do is, initially, you come in and you get in on an interview because of your CV. The next thing you do is you get to the next stage where you're going to be working with the person you'll be reporting to, and then you go through that stage of the interview to see how you relate with your immediate boss. The final stage is where you'll be assessed based on the work culture. Usually that is done with me. I take the person to a relaxed place. It's not in the office, maybe the balcony. And we're just chatting. And in some of the questions I'm asking, I'm trying to identify how you think, someone is asking, so it's humility, hunger, having fun, integrity, people smart, excellence, and speed. We call it HIPES, H-H-H-I-P-E-S. And so we then started using that to draw out our organogram based on the functions that we needed to fill in. And then people started understanding that you can have all the skill sets, you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't have the kind of mindset we have running the organization, you won't fit in. Now, what this translated to was that people will walk into our company and say, everybody seems to have the same way of thinking. Everybody seems to have the same way of playing, like as if we're all taking in the same team. And that became our culture. And then it started evolving into our people's way of behaving. Now, it has told, the fact is that in the last 3.5 years, we have 88 people in the company, and only 7 people have left our company since inception, which shows how much we've done with our culture, how much people appreciate also working with us. It's not like we're paying the most, but people find emotional satisfaction beyond financial satisfaction working in the organization. People find success in building themselves as individuals. People are able to evolve. I encourage my team members to have side businesses. It's not something you will hear a regular CEO say, but I've said it that every time you find an entrepreneur come into an organization to work, they bring the entrepreneur's mindset and think on how to create solutions beyond salary. And so I want entrepreneurs all over the place that are congregating together as staff of the organization, building the firm. And that is why I
Right.
encourage them to always have one or two things they do on the side that allows them to exert themselves with their entrepreneurial energy to get things going. Wanting to do, it's not easy for people to do, but I've seen a lot of success for it, for us in doing that in our organization. Then finally, advising people to become entrepreneurs in their office while working on their own dreams. The way I see it is the best of employees behave like entrepreneurs even while they are working with other people. And the mindset behind that is the word called intrapreneurship. So in the little that you're given to do in the organization you find yourself working in, you behave as though you are the entrepreneur running that particular department within that firm. If you're going to be a very successful entrepreneur, you have to be a very successful intrapreneur first, able to take resources that are given to you and do the best with it. That's one. Able to observe the other departments. So, for instance, I work in the finance department in an organization. It doesn't mean that, because if I have the goal and the vision of building my own business, I will not just sit on only what concerns me in my department. I want to know how the HR people are doing their own business. I want to know how the marketing people are doing their own business. Once in a while, I want to ask the CEO his biggest fears. I want to be able to interpret how he's dealing with day-to-day business. That is my own MBA I'm going through while working with a person that is leading his business. And then in the future, I take all those lessons and I'm able to do the same in my business. These are the lessons I had to go through with coming out of school in 2006 until I started Farm Crowdy in 2016. 10 years of actually schooling myself in understanding the different arms of business, so that as a CEO of your business, you become your chief marketing officer, you become your chief recruitment officer, you become your chief sales officer, you become your chief financial officer initially before you start getting the right people on the team. So I always encourage people, if you're thinking about starting your own business, first of all, be a great entrepreneur. Second, do not start looking for funding while you're still working in another person's business. Use your salary. If you can use your own pain and sweat to start out your business on the side, be 100% committed to the job you're doing. Sorry, 1 second. Be 100% committed to the work you're doing on a day-to-day basis, so that you are an exemplary employee of the organization. 5 o'clock, you shut down from what you're doing in the office, and you can go back to your mini office at home and start out working on your little idea that you hope to become a monster in the future. Spend your time on that between 5 and 10 or between 5 and 9 every day, and then get back to the office and you do your bit in the office where you're working for. Because I also believe in karma. If you are a shitty employee, frankly speaking, in the organization you work in today, you will have shitty employers. I mean, if you're a shitty employee in where you're working, you will have shitty staff when it's time to recruit, because it's going to come back at you. But if you're a fantastic person working where you learn the ropes, you find a way of recruiting the right people, you will get the same kind of people deliver when it's time for you to do your own business. And so once you're able to bootstrap, once you're able to start out with your own salary, go ahead and then try out your revenue model first. Find a way of asking your business model to first generate at least, if it's possible, 30 to 40 to 50% of your monthly spend before you will tell yourself it's time for you to move on to that project. Because if you do not have enough reserve and you want to dwell on the revenue coming out of your business and it's too early, you will literally shut down your business before it even starts, because you will drag it down with the weight of your own expectations. And so my own motto now is to first, I will want to recruit I will first tell myself that I'm going to be spending time on my business after work. I want to be the best entrepreneur in the organization I'm working in by learning through the ropes. I want to bootstrap myself. I want to see revenue coming before, to a point where I know I can sustain myself at the time I leave or at least I have savings that will take me for the next 1 year, 2 years, while I'm waiting for this business to start making the revenue that will sustain me. At that point in time, when you've done all of this and you now have paying customers with the potential for you to scale, then it's time for you to leave that business and then go ahead and build your venture.
Oh my goodness. I'm glad I'm recording this, because this is just a wealth of information right now. And I'm so glad that you're here sharing it with us. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and I've also asked everybody to start sending their questions in. It's the quick fire round of questions. If by any chance you just joined us, please make sure that you've muted yourself. I'm trying to mute everybody upon their entry, but just in case that doesn't work for you, please make sure you mute yourself out of respect of all participants. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much, Onyeka. The question that I have is, so the first job that you had, and you said you're going to need a co-founder. What were the skill sets that you both possessed? Why couldn't you do it by yourself? After all, I'm a founder by myself, and a lot of, when I was pitching to a few investors, they all asked me why I don't have a co-founder, and I just didn't necessarily. Everybody's business is different, and I didn't necessarily think it was. I didn't think it was necessary. I would have liked one, but then I'll be honest, I was a bit selfish. I didn't want to give away shares at the time. Could you please mute yourself? Thank you. There we go. So. Why are we okay? So where was I saying? So I wanted to know, why did you choose to specifically have a co-founder, and what are the benefits?
Okay, so for me, the first business I did, I was the sole founder of that business, and we went on to raise $50,000 in 2013. To help us take that business off the ground successfully. But the decisions I then eventually made for that business were decisions I made alone. And then the consequences of those decisions, I had to bear them alone. Now, because I was in a position where I felt that I didn't have enough knowledge across the different areas, I should have recruited at that time maybe a media co-founder. So you're talking about complementary skills. The complementary skills I will go for as a founder myself, if I was going to start an app business to get a co-founder, would be one, who's going to get me the skill set. So if I identify, for instance, let me take farm crowding. I'm going into agriculture. I don't know anything about agriculture, but I need to get into that space and to build a business. My ideal co-founder will be first, someone that understands agriculture. Second will be, I'm going to be building stuff around technology, and I want to move super fast. I need somebody that understands technology. I need someone that understands finance that will help me manage the whole process of crowdfunding. Now, in these three people, I'll find my ideal co-founders to work with. Why would I want to have them on board quickly? It's because I'm not usually too patient to have the business take its form over a 1 year, 2 year period alone, running solo, and waiting for me to understand every aspect of the business before I take off. I want to be able to start the business, and in 1 month, 2 months, because of the complementary skills of these individuals that could have as well been their own founders, running their own finance business or running their own tech business, but because they brought all those skill sets into this business, together we're able to think how we can scale fast. And that is so important, because the problem with staying solo is that if you don't have all the resources in place, whether it's people or finance to get the business off the ground running, if you are starting out a new idea that is going to be a super, super idea, what you will find, especially in our space in Nigeria, is that somebody will just be waiting with all the money for you to try out that model. And as soon as you have it working, he copies it and he will run with it. And then one day people will say, hey, I know this guy, he's responsible for starting out. And they're like, no, somebody else actually kicked this idea first. But nobody will know that person because he wasn't able to run very fast. But with co-founders, you can do that. The flip side is when things go bad, at least you have a shoulder to cry on. You'll be able to look at someone and say, yeah, we did our best. We can drink on it. We can laugh over it. We can cry over it. And even when things succeed, you will have grown certain people, replicated yourself in several others that potentially can build their own businesses as a result of doing this one with you.
Thank you. Olani Yokbayemi says, how do you roll out shares with co-founders?
So in the shares part, usually my businesses, I start out myself, and I may have the idea, I would have drawn up the model before I start bringing in my co-founders. So most of the time, what you find me do is in bringing in co-founders on board, depending on the level of my involvement in the business, I will know how much I'm going to be keeping as the lead founder for that business. And to the other co-founders that are coming on board, depending on the time of entry, depending on how much they are bringing on board, with negotiations can start from 3, 4, 5% up onto 20%, 30% of the business, depending on how much they will be involved on the project and how much experience and how much network and how much resources that person is bringing on board. So I am usually open up until 20, 30%. I even have a business that between myself and the co-founder, we actually had a 60-40% relationship. And that was because he was going to do a lot of the work. I mean, even if I had the idea, I knew I wasn't going to be involved on a day-to-day basis of running that business. And I had to keep him motivated. Now, it is important that if you're going to get co-founders and you're going to raise money in the future from external investors, they will pay attention to how much your co-founders have. That will keep them motivated in business, because every time you raise money from investors, it's going to reduce the equity of that co-founder, and you don't want to reduce it to a point where it's meaningless. Yet that person is a key person for the success of the business, and the person decides to leave. And so you want to put yourself in a place where that person is motivated, as much as you want to keep a lot to yourself, but you have co-founders that are motivated as a result of equity, and you protect that for them, and they are motivated to continue to deliver on the mandate that you have.
Awesome. I have a question from, let me see, Jennifer. Jennifer, she's plugging herself here. Jennifer, founder of Retention Concierge. She wants to know, do you put customer experience at the center of your corporate strategy at any point?
Customer experience is very important. Customer satisfaction is even more important. So I definitely want to make you have a wow experience, but I want you to be really sad, because you can have a wow experience. For instance, if I decide to sell you pizza and you look at the experience of how the delivery goes and everything is happening, and you have a wow experience in the process of getting your pizza, but when you put that pizza in your mouth, it's sour. Now that customer, that is a very, I mean, the whole customer experience process has already been wasted. And so what I focus on is, as much as I'm looking at delivering to customers, I pay attention to the customer experience. I pay attention to the execution of the project to make sure it meets the expectation of the customer and exceeds it where possible. I look for ideas around how simple customer service and effectively dealing with feedback and effectively managing complaints is strong in our corporate culture. So that when a customer comes, because it's not very common here, but when a customer has that process going through us, it becomes part and parcel of how they perceive the brand over time.
Awesome. I think basically the company culture is very, very strong. I literally just finished reading a book last week called Culture Code.
Oh, fantastic.
And if you haven't read it, I'm sure you have, but if anybody out here hasn't read it, I'll put it in the minutes of the meeting as a book to definitely pick up when you're and I think it's also in the beginning stages of starting a brand and a business. I think it's very important, like you mentioned, to kind of know what your company culture is, because that will also help you inform the type of people that you should hire. So I've got 2 more questions, and then we'll move over to Edewor. So Timayo says, what solutions are there to starting a business with a colleague who's an absolute professional but does not know how to talk and work with others in a team? So it's just not a team player. Before you answer that, Onyeka, I'm still hearing some background noise. Can we all please mute ourselves if that hasn't been done already? Everyone just double check that they've muted themselves. Thank you. Okay, so how do you work with somebody who's great at delivering in their work, but is just not a good team player?
Now that's a very tricky one. So they're very good at their job, but they're not a team player. If you believe in strong culture, building the right culture for your organization, that's someone that may be preparing to head through the door out of the company. And that's how I look at it. If I was in your position and I was going to be making a decision based on that individual, I will, if we cannot build a project where he can run solo or she can run solo in executing their task without having to interact with anyone, which is very rare. And then business goes on as usual. But this person has to consistently work with other people in the team. I will start making.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, you've just paused, you've frozen. Hello? Okay, Onyeka, can everybody still hear Onyeka, or is it just myself that's frozen? Please update me so I know that we're in this together.
Hello? Hello?
I think her connection must have stopped.
Okay.
But I think she'll be back on, I guess, as soon as she connects again.
Okay. What if one within your cycle has complementary? Well, I just saw that. Maybe I can be responding to the questions.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So I'm back online. Thank you, everyone. I literally just, I'm not sure if it was my connection, but it just cut off and logged me back in. Okay, so back to you, Onyeka. You were wrapping up on the question before I got kicked off, which was relating to hiring somebody who wasn't a team player. And then we were going to go to the last question.
Yes, so I was saying that I will start making alternative plans for that person. Immediately I identify that. That is a major recruitment error. And so in correcting that, I will start making alternative plans. And then as soon as I have an alternative to the individual, I will look at that person leaving the organization. Because if you don't do that, it's going to have ripple effects on other people in the organization. And what will literally happen is that at some point you will lose total control of your people in the firm, because everybody will start talking like him or her, and everybody starts behaving like that individual. That's something you want to avoid.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I completely, it's like, what did they say? One bad egg or one bad seed spoils the fruit or something like that. One bad fruit spoils the bunch.
Yes.
There's a saying, but it goes like that, right? So the other question was, I think some of my chats have actually disappeared since I got kicked off and kicked back in, but logged back in. Afoke says, what if no one within your circle has a complementary skill, e.g. tech? What is your take on advertising such a co-founder position? And after that, we'll move on to Edewor. Would you advertise a co-founder position, or will you just hire?
So I've seen both happen in different spaces. Jumia will advertise for co-founder positions. I've seen people do it the other way by just hiring. I think recommendations are better. If you do not have anyone in your cycle that fits the profile of what you want for co-founder, so maybe for instance in the tech space, you will have people at least that are maybe tech entrepreneurs, or you have people that are tech CEOs. We have people that are in very leading firms that are running their technology platform. My advice would be to reach out to them and ask them for recommendations. And in the recommendations, you get to meet these people. Initially, do not bring them on as co-founders. You can have a CTO that's not necessarily a co-founder, a head of tech that's not a co-founder. And that person comes on board and then shows the passion and shows exemplary leadership in how they do their dealings. And then over time, you have it at the back of your mind that this person is someone I want to be a co-founder, but you want to see the person first deliver on their job. First, show that they understand leadership skills, show that they can represent the organization as a co-founder. So you let them do that first. And then after that, within a period of 3 months to 6 months to a year, you can then take the person up the notch and then call this person your co-founder.
That is spot on. I think that's exactly what I did. I don't have a co-founder, but I had a CTO, an acting CTO at the time. And I just had I engaged him to work for me for as long as it took me to build the site. And then every time I could afford him, I'd pay a little bit. And eventually I got my beta testing site, my beta version of the website built. But I knew that I didn't want a co-founder just yet because I hadn't found somebody that had all the skills. And I was like, okay, this person is someone that I can trust with my life. And apart from that, I want somebody that fits like the yin and yang, you know?
Yes, very true.
That's exactly what I was looking for. So on that note, I want to say thank you so much, Onyeka. You've been a wealth of information. I am recording this and I will send you a copy in about a week's time. It will be up on our YouTube channel. And then by the end of this week, we are also adding notes. We're sending minutes of each masterclass to everybody who has signed up. So if you think of any maybe websites that might be useful on hiring, or maybe books that you've read that also allows entrepreneurs to think through the hiring process just like you have, or have inspired you in any way, please feel free to share that with myself or my team member. And then we'll add that to the minutes of the meeting that we'll share at the end of the week. On that note, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And stay safe and social distance. All right. Thank you. Bye. Okay, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. Have a good one, Eku. All right. Bye-bye.
So that was Onyeka Akumah. Now, I just need to tell you guys a little secret. So I have my head of communication and digital marketing manager. Her name is Uzo. You may have received some emails from her if you're part of the Bookings Africa community. Interesting enough, it's like Fun Fact 101, Bookings Africa Fun Fact. So my head of digital communications, Uzo, her older brother is actually Onyeka. And I didn't know that at the time when I was hiring her. It just happened to be a small world. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know your brother. And yeah, so it's nice to actually know that you're hiring people that if I need advice, her brother is just one phone call away. Right, so we've got Edewor coming up next. And this is gonna be Echo is such a ball of energy. I met Echo about 10 years ago. Goodness, I really can't remember how or when or where we met, Echo. But I know that at the time, I think you were already with 53 Extra.
We actually met in a club.
Was it like, wait, let me do it. What's that one on our
Rehab.
Bacchus. Oh, Rehab. Okay. I thought it was Bacchus. Girl, yeah. So I think between 2010 and 2012, my memory isn't the best. I wasn't really working. I was in full party mode back then. So yeah, what brought you to Nigeria? Let's go all the way back to 2010. I mean, I've put your bio up. So it has here, you're an actor, producer, TV personality. You're a fashion icon almost. There's your model. You know, everybody loves you, G. But first of all, you moved over to Nigeria. Why? Did you know what you wanted to be when you moved to Nigeria? Did you actively, intentionally pursue a career in media? And how were you able to juggle everything, doing modeling, acting, TV, producing, being a TV presenter? It's not easy to wear all these different hats and pull it off so effortlessly. So please share your journey.
So I guess the quick question as to why I moved back to Nigeria was because I lost my stepdad. So it was, you know, it was a family, you know, family situation, and I wanted to come and spend time with my mom. I hadn't been home in a while, and I decided I was going to spend, at least a year in Nigeria, being with my mom, supporting her. I was working in her restaurant because she wasn't really in the state of mind at the time to want to do that. So I was just, trying to provide support. And when I was working, I would invite my friends to come and eat, to patronize the business. And I would ask them, I'm thinking of staying a bit longer. And, I had just finished at the New York Film Academy. I had just finished my training as an actress. And I kept saying, well, this is what I want to do. I didn't know what the entertainment scene was like here. And so I kept asking, if there's any opportunity, if anybody could sort of steer me in the right direction. And one of my friends, Kunle, said, you know what, there's some auditions that are coming up at Mnet. They're looking for new presenters. And that was literally it. So I actually went to the offices first to find out, if, when the auditions were happening. I happened to meet with Biola that day, actually. I think she was around, and they allowed me sort of introduce myself. And then I went away. They sent me, an invitation to come and audition. And I guess the rest is history, because I booked that job.
And congratulations.
Which was 53 Extra. So 10 years later, we just finally wrapped the show. But it's been an amazing 10 years. And, it's been a job that, even though I haven't been as present on the show as the beginning, it's been great. Yeah.
I remember all the red carpets that we've been together, and gosh, it's been such a journey, and I'm so proud of you. Congrats on a decade on TV. It's not easy. But in that time, you've transitioned to, you started off even before you came to Nigeria. You'd had a bit of a background in history already in modeling. You appeared in Britain's Next Top Model.
I actually, when I was at university, I applied to be on Britain's Next Top Model. But, in all honesty, I used to hate being called a model because I didn't hate the experience. Let's just say I didn't enjoy it. Maybe because I didn't win. But I definitely left that experience not wanting to be a model. I was like, nah, I'm going back to uni. This isn't for me. I'm going to focus on other things.
Fair enough. And then when you came back to Nigeria, you started working on 53 Extra. At what point did you go back into modeling then?
So it's interesting. As my profile grew, and because it was clear that, to a lot of people that I came, I had a passion for fashion anyways. I loved the aspect of of dressing up. And it was one of the reasons why they brought on a stylist, because I thought that the show should have a distinct style. And it meant that I had a lot of interaction with the fashion world, and they knew that I had a history of modeling. So they would ask me to do things, and some of the jobs that I got, because I now had a platform where people knew me. It was sort of, I guess I was a very early influencer, but they called it model. It's particularly, they specifically called it modeling, but I wouldn't describe myself as a model, because I wasn't going on castings. I wasn't sort of doing runway work. I was sort of just being hired to be the face of something based on my
profile.
My profile, yeah.
Fun. Oh, okay. And then you've always had a passion for acting as well. But then before you moved over, alongside the experience with Britain's Next Top Model, you did a bit of production. So why didn't you try to get into production in Nigeria?
So initially, it was interesting. When I first started, when I left modeling, I went to behind. I hated being in front of the camera after that experience. It was quite emotional for me to go through that experience. So I decided to go behind the camera. So I was working for a producer. I ended up getting a job as a producer's assistant, and so I was working for him. And in the process of working for him and working on sets, I missed being on screen. So that was the interesting thing. I missed acting. So once I decided, well, actually what I want to do is act. It's not modeling. I want to be acting. I decided to go to America and study further my acting. So that's why when I came first came back, I was very, very focused on getting onto television.
Awesome. Okay, so now that, what would you call yourself right now? Because TV presenting right now is done. You obviously, I see you on Netflix, so you can still tick the actor box, right?
Yeah.
And producer, because in the last few months, so let's say about a year, you've been actively working as a producer. So tell me about those projects and how did that come about?
So it's interesting. I guess when maybe I should just sort of go straight into dive into the talk, because I track how, I'll share screen. I track how I got into the process of, yeah.
You want to share your screen?
Yeah. Can you guys see that?
I can only see you. Okay, there we go. Yes.
Okay, so I guess, so one of the things you asked me when you first came to this talk, you said, I wanted to talk on upskilling, and I didn't really know what you meant at the time because it was sort of a fresh term for me. And I went and looked it up, and I guess I realized then that I was a natural upskiller. I'd always naturally been doing this as a means of essentially survival. So I guess what is upskilling to our audience? And it's essentially learning new skills. So like on a micro term, it's, it refers to learning skills as an individual. And on a bigger term, kind of picking up on, I guess, Onyeka's type of business, it's how basically technology and the digital world has sort of really changed the workplace, and how keeping up to date with those sort of skills is very important. Now, career pivoting, I guess, which is what the focus of the talk is the act of finding a career, which is sort of relying on the skills that you have, but it's not a total change of career. It's kind of finding skills that you have that you can sort of redirect to another part in your industry, so that you don't really have to start at the bottom. So, through my career, as Fali said, I modeled, I was a TV personality, I was able to pivot to include acting. That opportunity gave me modeling and influence opportunities. And because of my experience of working on set and being around producers and productions constantly, it wasn't such a hard transition to decide that I wanted to produce. So I guess that's essentially what that, pivoting and upskilling means. Now, I know like a lot of our parents used to say, oh, don't be a jack of all trades, a master of none. And it's kind of not true, to be honest. I would say that at the beginning of your career, it's important to focus. It's important to focus because you do need to sort of get your foot in the door, and you need to be established for something. People have to trust that you can do one thing well. But a lot of people don't know that the rest of this phrase is, but oftentimes better than a master of one, which is what I found was really important for me when I found myself struggling in just one career path and needing to pivot slightly to be able to increase my opportunities. So why did I personally start pivoting my career? Now, I found that despite doing the right things, like I was trained, I was reading monologues, I was going to auditions, I was really sort of bettering myself, I went to school. I found that sometimes in this environment, in the Nigerian industry, it's still a developing industry. And sometimes just because someone has read all the books, they've been to all the classes, they've had all the experiences, it sometimes doesn't give you more leverage. It really does help. It means you're prepared, but sometimes it doesn't always mean that you're going to get the job that you want. And the more that this industry becomes more and more competitive, well, for me, I found that your demand decreases because there's more people to choose from. So if, for example, you are setting your price rate at a certain mark because you've earned the right to charge that much, somebody can still always come in and undercut you. And because we don't have unions to protect us, to say that we don't have unions that say that someone must be paid this amount or that amount, people will undercut. So it's a struggle. It's like really competitive. I was finding that I wasn't getting repeat work. For example, if I booked a show, if I didn't book a show, that show itself might not get funding the next year. So you don't get your character might not continue. It might just be for one season, or you might not get more work after that. I found that when I was only doing one job, I wasn't earning enough. So I wasn't earning enough to be able to sort of survive the way that I wanted to be able to pay rent and just be comfortable and not stress. And then also I would find that sometimes casting me was a challenge all the time because it's just the nature. I don't look like the typical everyday character. So finding those opportunities I found hard. So I wanted more control. So why did I pivot? I pivoted because I wanted to make money. That's why I wanted to make money. I didn't want to be struggling because this industry is very tough and you will struggle, and the money aspect is so important. You know, I've never ever wanted to be a starving actor or actress. It's just not my portion, you know? So yeah, so how did I do it? So basically, how I did it was I made sure that when I was starting out in my career, I needed to get practical training. So taking classes, you know, learning on the job or asking people that you know to direct you, getting books, watching YouTube. Google is actually such an amazing resource. Listening to podcasts. I found that listening to podcasts have been very helpful at every stage of my career because so many people are willing to share information. Even just signing into the Zoom now, I've learned so much, and it's so important to be able to share information. So I found that, you know, that would give me, so I'm not going to say career pivot, it would give me career plus. So I was a producer's assistant, and then I trained, and all of a sudden from a producer's assistant, I was able to become a TV presenter. Then then I was able to use my TV presenter opportunities to move into acting. Now, how did I move into acting? Because initially, when people sometimes associate you with one thing, they think that you're just trying to say, oh, I can do everything, I'm great. I can do X, Y, and Z. And it's great if you can do X, Y, and Z very well. But if you can't, but we've already covered that ground, like try and master yourself in each. But what I found was that you have to ask. This is once your foot is in the door, and I guess my foot was in the door via TV presenting, it meant that people wouldn't just say, oh, just because I knew that you can act. I didn't expect anything to land on my lap. So you have to be a great networker. Fade is a great networker. She is amazing at selling herself. She's amazing at selling a company. And obviously that's how she was obviously able to get Bookings Africa off the ground. But I used to be so shy. I used to hate asking for anything. I felt it was like beggy, you know? And so I eventually got over that, you know, that sort of camera, you know, that awkwardness. And I would just go up to people I knew could connect me, and I'd say, look, please, you know, I'm a presenter now, but I'm actually a great actor. I'd like to increase my opportunities. Please, can I come and audition? And I wasn't asking for a job. I was literally asking to audition. I'm not asking for a handout. Just let me get that opportunity. And that's how I saw, you know, when I met Muabudu at a mixer, and I said, please, I'd love to audition for one of your projects. And that's how Castle and Castle happened. Another thing that's interesting when you're in this business is that when you get more exposure, there are more opportunities you can get just because the industry demands it, right? Right now, technology is everything, social media, you have to be digitally literate. So if, for example, you're an actor, build your profile, because when you're building your profile and people see that you have influence, you will naturally become an influencer. And you know, at the beginning, I think, of the turn of this social media, a lot of actors were very snooty about it, like, oh no, I'm not going to sell myself like that, you know, I'm an actor. But then the sort of financial possibilities of being an influencer are great. Influencing has paid my bills when acting didn't, when TV presenting didn't. So it's been important that I enjoy, you know, using social media, and I'm probably not as great as other people on social media because I don't engage as much. But with my platform and what I do know, I've been able to get work that way. And now this is it. Learning on the job is so important. When I was a TV presenter and actor, I end up being a contributing producer on set a lot, because I would say, I want to produce this, show me how it's done. I wanted to learn how producers were putting things together here. I would want to constantly see what the different jobs were. You know, what is the camera guy doing? What is the lighting guy doing? What's grip doing? And when you learn all those different facets, you're a producer. So the jump from a producer, presenter, actor is not that far. You know, your pivot is not that is not that large. So I was able to move. How did I get into producing? So I was cast in a film and I had a very small role, and the director needed a location, and I stepped in and I provided the location. I wasn't the location manager, but he was like, oh wow, like thank you so much for doing that. Do you have production experience? And I said, yeah, well, I used to produce when that was one of my first jobs, and I've obviously been producing casually or softly, not casually, softly with 53 Extra. So it's just a skill that I have, and that's literally how I kicked off, and that's how BB Shashere hired me to come and produce his first commercial, actually, and my first commercial. Him as a director and me as a producer, and that's how we produced Heroes first, Heroes ad for AB and Bev. So that's literally how I got back into producing. So as you can see, like my career trajectory, these sort of first formative years, I was fully focused on TV, being a TV personality. Acting wasn't really coming in, and modeling was here and there. And I just found that I wasn't getting enough. By the time I got to 2016, I went and had a baby. I came back, I realized that I needed to expand some more. And that's how I included more influencing. I started looking for more acting work. And I also started doing a lot more producing. Now, what is so interesting about this trajectory is that nobody could have planned for COVID-19, which is nobody could have planned for it, because without my pivoting and growing my CV, I wouldn't be where I am today, which is working from home. We're currently in development on a project, and I'm working primarily as a producer and still getting influencing work from brands that want me to do some promotion. So you can see how important it is to be able to have skills that you can shift around in the industry that you want to be in. So yeah, that's all for my slide. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for such a great slide. Oh gosh, that was so informative, actually. I was like, yes, girl. It's nice to actually see in a chronological order how you've actually, your growth. I love it. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm not just saying that because I'm your friend. I truly am. And I, as a producer as well, I know that production in Africa is not the easiest, especially in Nigeria, West Africa. It can be quite difficult. You do get some clients that might say, oh, I want a Chinese actor and I want an Indian actor who can speak Yoruba because that's what the script demands. That's not the easiest thing to find, you know? So I do commend any producer, and of course yourself as well. And say hi to your little girl for me, my little baby girl. So I've got a couple of questions I jotted down earlier on. I know everybody's situation's different, but in Nigeria, and I think you hit the nail on the head in one of your slides, you mentioned that you needed just money, basically, and what they were paying you from one job wasn't enough, but wasn't sufficient to cover your needs. And I say this to a lot of people. When I was on radio, a lot of people knew me by the Beat FM. And I was there for just 5 years, and I was there Saturday, Sunday. That was it. Monday through to Friday, I was running my production company, Film Factory, at the time. What I was making on radio in a month is what I was paying my PA as her monthly salary. So my salary at the end of the month on radio, I would literally just hand it over to her because the money was not enough. It did nothing for me. So I was making more money as being an influencer at the time, of course, from my production company, hosting shows. So you've got to look at the space that you're in and say, okay, how can I be of more value, and how can I harness more value so that people actually pay me? Because when you're on radio, the money that they pay you to be on radio, to be on TV is actually minimal. But what they're giving you is exposure. They're giving you that platform so that you can actually then leverage that platform so that international brands, global brands will come and then pay you 10 times whatever you're getting paid on TV or radio. And that's whatever space you were in. To all my budding entrepreneurs, whatever space you were in, you might be, I don't know, a makeup artist assistant, you might be a cashier, you might be a receptionist, but the company that you're working for, what do they do? Who else, who's above you? What's the hierarchy? What's the CEO's culture? Are you in the office before the CEO? If not, what time does the CEO get there? Start forming habits, start trying to expand your network so you're not just stuck in, oh, I'm just the cashier and that's it. And then when the investors or go ahead.
Yeah, so like I have to say that it's so important to acquire new skills, and I have to say in this new age, and you know, the fact that we're on Zoom now, the importance of digital literacy is so important. Yes. So for example, where I'm in development on a project now, I needed writing assistance, you know, and research assistance. And I had a lot of applications. I put, you know, I put a blast out. I had a lot of applications. I went through all of them. And one of the challenges that I gave the assistants was, because I knew we had to be online, was that I gave them research questions, and I asked them to share it with me on Google Drive, because I wanted everyone to be on it. Like, everyone knows what Google Drive is, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted them to share it on Google Drive. And one of the reasons why some of them didn't get a position was because they didn't know how to do that. And I didn't have time to have to train someone through that process. So automatically, just knowing how to handle Google Drive puts you ahead of. And one of the people that we ended up hiring was not even as qualified as a writer. So in terms of her first, she wanted to get into writing, but her CV didn't reflect writing so much. But she was so tech savvy that she's been exactly what we needed in the room, because it's meant that we don't have any technical issues. Everybody gets their notes on time, and there's no slow. So it's so important to also understand what's happening in your industry digitally, where it's moving to, and technology is where it's at. So for everybody that wants to be able to put themselves forward to say, I want to do this and do that, make sure that you have those skills really quite tight, I would say.
Thank you. I've got a question from G5. And they want to know, Eku, being in the entertainment industry and a producer, how are you able to access funding opportunities to enable you have the kind of productions that you want? So do you want to explain your role as a producer? So they might, anyways, go ahead.
Okay, so currently in my position as a producer, I don't actually do the financing. I don't source financing. I'm hired on as a freelance producer. So essentially as a line producer to manage the funds that have already been raised by the client and pull the production together. So I creatively produce, and I make sure that the money, that the budget that is assigned me is basically made to look like magic on screen. So whatever budget to deliver, and make sure that it looks to the quality that the client wants, and, you know, importantly, that we want to put out there as well. So in terms of financing, I can talk to financing because I've been in a position of having to raise money before, but I wouldn't say it's the current skill set that I'm using right now.
Just to clarify as well, just to take it a step further, there's a difference between an exec producer and a line producer. Some of you may not know that. So executive producers, they are actually in charge of getting the funding, whilst the line producer manages it. So the line producer essentially pays everybody and makes sure that they get everybody and everything at the best price possible. And they make everything look as good as possible.
I would say for times when I wanted to raise funding for projects, if there were smaller projects, then and first-time projects and small projects that you just want to be able to raise a little money for, I would say angel investors are always the best. Just go to, you know, if you have lots of aunties and uncles, even better for you, go and ask, so that you can be in a position where you raise money and you don't have to pay it back in case it flops. And you have a product that you can decide next time, okay, if I'm going to be raising more money, you have something to show to the next client, and at the same time be able to sort of work out what went wrong and possibly, you know, how to better the next situation.
And also remember that if you're going to approach angel investors, it's still also good to have a business plan and business model with you, and also use the opportunity to practice your pitch, as we spoke about yesterday. Practice. Mariam Al-Hassan says, my question goes like this. How does one tie up skills or experience to be able to turn a trajectory in one's career path? I'm currently trying to do so, but to every other person not in my career line, by the way I look unstable, and I'm called out constantly to go back to that role that has constantly been detrimental to me physically and mentally. Is my question understandable? Okay, Mariam, I'm trying to get it. I think basically she's left her job to try and follow her career path that she's always wanted, her passion. But a lot of people are telling her that this new trajectory isn't working out for her, that she should go back to the stable life. What advice would you give someone like her?
I guess it's quite a hard question to answer because I don't know what career you're moving from to. It's very, you know, I don't typically advise dropping everything from one job to try and to try and get into entertainment, because entertainment is so unstable at the beginning, especially when you're trying to find out where you fit and when you're trying to find stability. So I'd always advise that if you have some stable form of income, to continue to take that in. If it means that the job doesn't allow you to be able to pursue your career and you're confident that you can do it, I would save some money for a little bit before quitting. Like Onyeka said, put 50% of your salary aside so that you can invest in yourself, so you have something to survive on. And it also gives you time to decide, if it's not working out, whether you will acquire a part-time job, which I always recommend for young actors anyways, and to find part-time jobs that can make them a bit of money so that they have something to live off whilst trying to, you know, break it into the industry.
Emanuela and Timayo both have a similar question. It says, how are you able to interact and network with potential clients, but not seem like you're pestering them? So in other words, how do you network without coming off as being a bother?
Oh gosh. So see, this is something that I always, like, I'm such a I get so cringed out by anybody feeling like I'm being a Klingon. And so I really do feel, I do really feel your pain. I do think that it's really important I think it's nice to always have your timing, right? If you're meeting somebody at a party, it's always nice to get them, as opposed to walk up to them and just be kind of scary, to hopefully have a contact that can introduce you and you know, validate why you're talking to them, and use your 5 minutes wisely, and you know, use your 5 minutes wisely. Don't go and start trying to sell too much of yourself. You know, maybe if you have a moment of conversation, you know, bring up in a subtle way, like Merit is saying, that what you do. And I mean, I wish I could give an example here, but normally it's business. Business is taking those opportunities. You know, you don't want to be too aggressive. If somebody doesn't want to talk to you in that moment, be gracious enough to walk away and hope like another opportunity will come up. And obviously at work mixes, you know, there are lots of I find that a lot of banks, a lot of industries do a lot of Q&A sessions, and that's always quite a nice way to be able to meet someone because it's official, right? So even getting access through, you know, stuff like Accelerate Project, if you're an actor, you're immediately meeting filmmakers, and it's quite a nice way to be able to meet them that way. Yeah, Fade, you're a great networker, so maybe you can answer that question.
First of all, I always have a business card. Even when I didn't have a job, I just had a business card. I had my name, my phone number, and my email. I didn't have a job title on there. I just had my name in a fancy font and I had my contact details. So I'd always, one of two things, depends on context. Where am I? And how did I meet this person? Is it a case of I just got invited by someone, hey, there's a party going on, come over here, and I just happened to bump into someone that I've been wanting to meet? That approach is slightly different. Or if it's something that's a bit more intentional, such as I know that there's a specific event for a specific brand and the head of marketing, the CFO, the CTO, the whoever are all going to be there. I kind of do a little bit of research on them. I find out what the company goals are, what their mission and vision and what their core culture is, right? And then a lot of the times on people's website, they actually tell you what their goals are. Like in the next 10 years, we want to be this, we want to be that, we want to have reduced this, we want to have whatever it is, right? And then when I speak to the person, I try and pull on their heartstrings based on whatever those goals are. Like, oh, I really commend that you guys are aiming, trying to achieve this. I think then I always try and add value. You might be able to fast track it if or if you're trying to sell this and perhaps get more attention, my production company could shoot an amazing documentary for you, and we could also do it as part of our CSR. So we're winning and we're also highlighting your CSR as well. If you're interested in that, here's my card, let's speak. You know, so I always try and highlight and focus on something in need that they have. And if you were listening to what Dr. Toye said yesterday, it was always about who your audience. So that's basically, are you selling or are you pitching? even though, yes, you're trying to network, but at the same time, you're trying to pitch something, you're trying to sell something to them. So you're selling an idea, you're selling yourself, but they need to want to buy it. So it has to be of value to them. So you're never going to be a bother to somebody. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, you know, I think I can work for you for free, and I used to be Bill Gates' XPA or something. What? I don't care if I've met you in the middle of the road or jogging. I would be like, yes, come. You want to work for me for free? And you were this person. I know that you're going to value to my business. So why would I say no? I don't care where I am. That's a good enough value proposition for me to stop everything that I'm doing and catch my attention and say, okay, let's talk further. So that's what you want. You want to have something that's a teaser that can grab people's attention, and then you follow up with your card and you say, okay, and you make sure that you take theirs as well and say, right, I would love to send you something, or let's arrange a proper sit down. So that's always how I do it. I try to, especially if it's, like I said, a situation that is a bit more controlled. If it's just an anomaly situation, you know, that's just practice, and that's just confidence as well. But in Nigeria, in Lagos, things are everywhere small. So
yeah, I definitely think that if it's something that you have a trouble with, you just have to practice. I give myself the biggest pep talks. You know, it's so interesting. People don't assume that I'm a shy person, but it's just, there's some skills I have to sort of ginger myself to say, oh, good afternoon, auntie, or good afternoon, sir. Please, you know, thank you, and you know, just try and present yourself in a way, because at the end of the day, you'll get to a point where your work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And you're able to present that, and then you don't have to sell it much. But even then, you're still going to go up for jobs that are competitive, and being present in a room is always great. But I'm always much more confident in presentation situations because I'm confident about what I'm talking about, and I know I have the room. Any other questions?
I think we're rounding up now. Murdo Atta says, and I think a couple of other people have asked this as well, basically asking about your work-life balance. Since you are juggling multiple careers, how do you find the time to basically relax, and how do you find the time to balance it all?
So I'm not going to lie, when I first started, there was no work-life balance. It was just work. It was just, and I had no money to have I had no money to do anything else because it just wasn't well paid. And so it was home. I had to sit my ass home because that's what I could do in my free time when I did have free time. And in that free time, you know, you just want to relax and unwind. But I was working so much when I initially started. It was 53 Extra was one of the few kind of lifestyle red carpet shows that was trying to cover as much as possible. So some days I was doing 20 red carpets in a month. I mean, it was pretty wild. And this was at the time when we didn't know when we would start early and we would finish like 3 a.m. in the morning. My mom thought I was going to get kidnapped constantly, but that's another story. But now that, you know, I think you get to a point in your career, you feel it, where your career breathes out a little bit. You manage to get a moment where there's some air, and that's the only way I can explain it, where you can see where you need to take time. Also, interestingly enough, as soon as I had my daughter, I automatically slowed down, and because I had to take time out, obviously, to have a child. But I realized that I was valuable to my industry, and I wasn't, you know, it wasn't going to be a situation where they would forget about me inside, because I had shown value. I had built up a reputation of professionalism. I had built up relationships with people that, you know, I had built up long-standing relationships where people would wait for me, and that was really good. And I also realized the understanding of putting your needs first. So I stopped running around helter-skelter, trying to find as many jobs as I could find. And I started to, you know, go for jobs that I really wanted, and start to allow also jobs to come to me, and appreciate that not everything was, you know, not is for you. Not everything is going needs to be chased. Not everything needs to be not everything needs to be followed up. I don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to see me on every red carpet. I don't have to go to every event. I don't have to open an envelope. So it was whatever I felt was important to me and my values. And right now I'm really focused on film, developing film, contributing to the film world. So a lot of times if I'm coming out, it's really to support directors, producers, to meet them, to meet other actors, to start to build that network, because that is the industry I really want to excel in.
I definitely think that I definitely agree with you. In order to thrive in a new space, or any space that you want to be known in, you definitely need to network. When I was pivoting my career from media into the tech space, that's one of the first things that I did. I was like, I could count on one hand how many people in the tech space that I knew in Nigeria. And I was just like, if I want to be a thought leader and I want to be taken seriously, people need to know me. Like, people didn't know if I did BTFM in the tech space. They were just another girl. Like, who are you? Who do you work for? What do you do? And I was, I was humbled. I was just like, okay, so I can't come here thinking I've got a bunch of fans. No, I don't. So everybody's in an even playing field. I've now got to show them my value. So
I want to pick up this question. How do you push your personal brand
yes.
in a field so packed full of the same thing? And this for me actually is quite important, because I do feel that there's a lot of copycat culture. I would say in the entertainment industry, because people think, okay, if one thing is working, then that's the only thing that's working. And I don't think that's true. I do believe a lot in authenticity, simply because now, like you said, we're saturated with saying the same thing over and over again. And authenticity doesn't just mean that you need to be totally wary and, and throw everything out the books. If that's who you are and you know how to brand that, then perfect, right? But speaking clearly is always important. You don't need to have an accent. You just need to be able to communicate what you're trying to say. And I always say that to people that are presenters, like, look, I don't need you to speak in an English accent, American accent. I need you to be who you are, and I need to be able to receive the message clearly. And I need you to sell me who's on here, who's Adebayo, who's Flourish, who's Oluwatobi, who's Tamayo, who are you who are you? So that, who's Becca? So that so I feel connected to you as a person, because a lot of times, if I see people copycatting, I turn off, because it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel right. Yeah.
So authenticity is the key word. And one person that I think has the most authentic reputation and brand is Rihanna, which is why I think she has one of the best records when it comes to being an ambassador and actually being a real influencer. So if you want to think about being authentically yourself, look at her. So I think last question for you before we love you and leave you, and then I'll take over the final portion of the masterclass. Tim, once again, you're asking a lot of questions today, and that's my brother, by the way, everyone. Hi, bro. So he says, in this age of social media, when it comes to networking and brand building, does word of mouth still work, or is it imperative to have a tangible digital footprint?
I definitely think it is. Word of mouth will always be a great way for marketing, but but if I had to be entirely honest with you, having a digital footprint is extremely important. It's extremely, extremely important, because that is just where people are looking to. That is where marketers and PR agencies and distributors and filmmakers and casting directors, they are looking at that. Even as a casting director, it's so easy to look at a picture and I'm like, oh, who is this person? And I'll go to your Instagram page. And if you look nothing like the picture that you sent it, immediately I'm like, okay, who is this? So it's actually really important to build a sort of a brand. And it doesn't have to be based on you, right? It can be based on the values that you're selling. It could be based on what you're trying to put out there. It could be your interests, but it is very, very important. I know my mom has been working in the interior design business industry for just over for about 30 years, and she is extremely talented. She has the product, she has the business, she has the production line, but the only thing that she's struggling with now is that she never digitalized her company. So she's finding that a real struggle, and it's something that I'm working with her on, to take her business from being quite static in a sense, because the interesting thing is when you Google Nigerian companies, it doesn't tell you reputation. The first thing you see is interior designer. And a lot of times these days what happens is that you can have a situation where you hire an interior designer who has no experience because they just happen to have a stronger digital footprint. And I do think it's important in this day and age, especially now. Look at us. My mom could be selling chairs online. She could be selling her chairs and we could be shipping it to your houses, or cushions or blankets. I just think this is the way of the world at the moment. And I think it's really important to develop that.
Thank you so much, G. Echo. So it's been amazing having you with us. I appreciate you taking your time out, about an hour or so. And it's been very, very enlightening, everything that you've shared about your career journey so far, the trajectory, and how you've been able to build your brand and how you've been able to harness value whichever way you've pivoted. And I think what the main thing that I've taken from this is you're like a sponge. You're always soaking up information. You're always curious. How does this work? How does that work? So you never want to stop learning. And because of that, that's why upskilling, which is always constantly learning a new skill. So you can't just be complacent and say, you know, I've got a first class in mass communication, so I'm going to be a great presenter automatically. But you haven't taken the adequate steps. You haven't networked. You haven't found out what they're doing practically to be the brand that they are. So a lot of people just become a little bit too complacent. And I love the way that you've highlighted that no matter what position you were in, you were always actively trying to improve your role and your knowledge in that division and that sector that you're playing in. So I appreciate that. Stay blessed, stay safe. You can of course please stay online for the next 20 minutes. I'm now going to be sharing my journey, how I've pivoted my career, and also how I've actually hired a team of about 15 people or so far. So feel free to stay online. If you've got to run, no problem. I'll catch you soon. And my love to your family. So everyone, please.
Yeah. I'll keep you on in the background, girl. Don't worry, I'm here for you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so everyone, so stay with me. Let me swap screens now so you can see me. Hold up, guys. Can you guys see me? All right, so there we go. All right, guys, so I'm back fully. I'm with you, and thank you so much for staying with me for the last, gosh, how many hours has it been now? An hour and a half. I'm really gonna try and speed through the last 10 years of my life. I don't know how far back I should go. Hi, Kayla, thanks for logging in again. Hi, Precious. You're a little bit late, but better late than never. Mo, I see you. Okay, so I'll give you my history when it comes to my career trajectory, and I'm trying to figure out how far back I really should go. What's the most relevant? Let me just start with my career in Nigeria, because before that I was living and working in London, and I was always just working for somebody. But there are a few points in my life where I pivoted in London, but I think we'll focus on Nigeria. So when I moved to Nigeria in 2010, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, because I had just left Google in London and I wanted to do digital advertising. I was an SEO specialist, search engine optimization specialist. And I went to a lot of banks, a lot of telecoms companies, and they didn't understand digital advertising, because at that point when I arrived into Nigeria, digital advertising was just zero. So just to get them to grasp the importance of having a digital footprint, they just didn't get it. So I realized I was a bit ahead of my time. So I looked back on, okay, what other skills or experience do I have that I can then use? I studied journalism. I have a first class degree in that. So whilst I was trying to reach out to other to the telecoms and to do the digital advertising, I started freelancing for PM newspaper, Guardian newspaper, Next 234 newspaper. So I was a freelance journalist and I had a weekly column in a few newspapers. So at least I was getting some money every week from there. So that was job number one. Job number two, I went to Radio Continental. Actually, I went to TV Continental, and I wanted to be a TV producer. I wanted to create some content for them because my brother's just on the director. I've already got a lot of production experience. My dad owned an advertising agency, so I've been producing for him. But those were all just like side hustles. I was just helping my family out. Production at the time wasn't something that I thought that I wanted to do full time. But when I got into TV Continental, I thought, okay, let me see if I can actually produce some content for them. I went into the facility, and at the time, I wasn't impressed with the quality of the equipment and the way the systems and processes that they had in place wasn't for me. So I happened to leave there, and I bumped into my dad's good friend who was the head of radio for Radio Continental. I started working at Radio Continental for 6 months. And then I got the opportunity a few months later to work at Beat FM. So bearing in mind, I started working at Beat FM Saturday, Sunday, and I started in 2011, I believe. And that same year, I also started Film Factory with my brother. So since 2011, I've literally been working every single day. I left Beat FM for, I think, I was there for 5 years, and I left, yes, in 2016, January 2016. So at that time, it took me 5 years to choose one job, basically. So for 5 years, I was juggling both careers. I was moonlighting. I was working as I was running my production company, Film Factory, Monday to Friday, and I was doing my radio Saturday, Sunday. And sometimes, even though I'm running my production company in the evening, I could be hosting a show. I could be, I could have a club appearance that I'm being paid to go to. I'm being paid to tweet about something. So also as an influencer, I started getting paid simply because of the exposure and the platform that I had being on a popular radio station. So I was able to harness the value and the exposure that radio station gave me. So that was career pivoting number one. So in 2016, when I left, a lot of people asked me the question, Patty, why did you leave radio? And I simply said, first of all, I wasn't going to go into the whole economics, the financial aspect of it, that, what I make in a month on radio, I make in an hour producing. So I literally was just doing radio because I genuinely loved it. I loved talking. I loved music. I loved interacting with the listeners. So that was a passion for me. But then you got to think about your career. My father passed away in 2013. Gosh, is that long ago? 2013. And when that happened, I started thinking a lot about my life. I thought, right, okay, if God forbid something happens to me, what would I be? What would I do? Will I be known as Fade, the radio presenter? Is that all I want to be known as in my life? Is there more that I think that I can do? And I started really restructuring what I thought was important, because I'm not going to lie, I did love the limelight. I did love everywhere that I would go. I'm getting free bottles of drinks and free entry into here and gifts. And I mean, who wouldn't love that? But I started looking at it and thinking, is this my purpose in life, or am I just comfortable here because of the popularity? So I remember when I turned 30, I said, right, my motto for this year is going to be purpose over popularity. And that was what I told myself. And that's all the conviction that I needed that made me decide to leave Beat FM and focus on Film Factory. So from 2016, I was working full time on Film Factory. And the reason was, I say to people, you can't have two husbands. I loved Beat FM, I loved Film Factory, but I built up Film Factory and I had a staff that I felt responsible for. And also owning it with your family. Your brother is, I own Film Factory with my brother. So I felt kind of obligated to choose Film Factory beyond Beat FM. So that was, but I couldn't leave Beat FM at the time, because there were some months in the beginning in 2011 when I started Film Factory, there were some months where a long period of month where we had not a single client, not one video was shot, not one TV commercial was shot, nothing was shot. So all I would have to survive on was that salary that I was getting from Beat FM that month. So until I was able to get Film Factory to the point where I was getting steady income and steady salary, and then I could obviously save as well, is when I was confident enough to say, right, I can step aside from Beat FM and I can go delve myself into Film Factory solo completely. And then around that time, is when, and if you were listening to day one, the business plan, the starter pack, I talked about how I thought about Bookings Africa. Back around 2015, 2016, so it was around the time that I left and I was working on Film Factory so completely, is when I got the idea to start Bookings Africa. So I think the timing was perfect because God kind of knew that, okay, I wouldn't have been able to concentrate on Bookings Africa as well. So that's why he kind of decluttered the space that I had in my brain for my love for radio, and he filled it in with, he removed what was giving me the popularity, and I think he replaced it with what I now believe is my purpose. And like I said, when I was 30, I wrote down purpose over popularity, and a few months later, I got the idea for Bookings Africa. And the moment I got it, and the way that I received the idea for Bookings Africa, I do believe it was a God-given idea. And I just felt like I have to pursue this. So that was in 2016. In 2018, end of 2017, beginning of 2018, I told Chesson, bro, I love you, but I'm going to have to leave you. So I'm actually going to have to leave Film Factory and focus solely on Bookings Africa. And everybody was a little bit surprised. They were like, why would you do that? However, I just felt like it was the best thing to do in my heart. I also felt that I'd trained up the Film Factory staff to the position where everything was working on autopilot. I didn't necessarily have to be in there to micromanage everybody. And another thing that was convenient was that I opened up my Bookings Africa office literally a few streets away from my Film Factory office. So in the transition period, and remember, if you were in day one as well, don't think it's a big fancy office. My Bookings Africa office was my mum's boys' quarters, okay? It was the BQ. I turned it, it had one desk, one little TV, one little microwave, and one little fridge. That was it. I could maybe have like two other people in the same space as me. So it was a dingy little space, but I love my mom. She was so generous. Thank you, mama. So that being said, I then left Film Factory and focused solely on film. I'm mixing up all my companies. I left Film Factory and focused solely on Bookings Africa, and that was beginning of 2018. So people ask about that career pivot as well, and they say, why did you make that decision? How did you do it? It literally was a light switch. I just literally woke up one morning and I said, I think my calling is Bookings Africa. I had this idea in 2015 or 2016, and I've been thinking about it. It's been bugging me. It's been burning me. And I just need to do this, like go big or go home. And I'm like that. I don't know. I'd probably say I'm quite, I wouldn't say fearless, but I don't tend to think about things too hard. I just think, do you know what's the worst that can happen? Worst that can happen, I'll go back and work. I'll go back and start up another company. I'll go back and get a job. That's the way that I always think. I can pick myself up, but I don't want to live a life of regret. So spontaneous is probably the right word. And so that's it. I got up one day and I said, right, Bookings Africa, here I come. And the first 6 months of Bookings Africa, I literally was studying. That's all I did. Now I'm going to share my screen quickly. There is a website, and I've given this, we're going to share this in the notes, but I just want you guys to see it. It is called Harvard iLab Startup Secrets. So this Startup Secrets is actually, it's a series on the Harvard Innovation Labs page. Hiring and team building is just one of the topics. So they have a bunch of videos here. They have a bunch of videos here that you can view. And this channel is literally what I watched that taught me everything. It was my building block, the foundation, the skeleton of everything entrepreneurship, everything startup that I've ever known and I've ever read and I've ever watched. So this was my 101 to startup. And a lot of the things that I learned and I've shared with you are actually from this website. So check out YouTube, check out Harvard Innovation Labs or just Harvard iLab, and you could just check out the startup series. So if you see, there's so many startup series. Yeah, there you go. So here you go. Harvard iLab Startup Series, Part 1, Value Proposition. Then you learn about hiring and team building. So specifically for this topic, if you want to find out more about hiring and team building, it's a 2-hour video. Go ahead and watch that. If you want to know about business model, roadmap to success, there's so many useful pieces of information that you can get when it comes to building and starting up a business right here. So I also have my own little story that I wanted to share with you. Let me see if I can find it now. This is how I practically, I don't know what age, is that what you guys are looking for? So I have my own show, The Personal Assistant. Let me search for that actually, that you guys can actually watch yourself. So I started up Personal Assistant a few years ago. It was just me and there you go. Episode 1, you can watch everything. Episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. So what I did here was I filmed myself hiring and the process that I underwent to hire my staff. When I was on radio at the time, this is back in 2015 or 2014, 2015, I was in radio and I wanted a personal assistant. So it was actually how I hired my personal assistant. But I believe that fundamentally, it would help you guys a lot. So a lot of things a big mistake that people make when they're hiring is they tend to just ask people word of mouth. I don't think that it's great to ask people for word of mouth and then just based on their recommendation, you hire them. It's good if you do word of mouth and then people recommend, but you always must test. I am not giving you my money and giving you a salary until you can prove everything that you've written. So if you watch the Edewor personal assistant search, from their CV alone, if you have a spelling mistake, oops, you're out of the pile. You can say, I type quickly and I'm good at proofreading. Okay, I invited 20 of the shortlisted 20 candidates or 10 candidates. I invited them over to my office and I started testing them. I read out a sentence to them and they had to take notes. I got them to create, come up with a pitch for a TV commercial because some of them said, oh, I'm very creative. I can come up with ideas for this. You can come up with ideas for a TV commercial? Great, let's do it. You're good at doing this. I tested every single skill set that was important to me. So step number 1, I would say is write down, when you're trying to hire somebody, write down what skill sets are important to you. So if you're a tailor, if you're, I don't know, a baker, if you're an accountant, you're a writer, you're whatever job you are in or whatever entrepreneurship venture you're trying to go into, what skill sets are most important to you? So if you need somebody who's an accountant, you need somebody who's a digital marketing specialist, what do you need them to be able to do? I want you to be able to post up something on a creative on Instagram and retweet it on Facebook and start up a Twitter business account where we could post up adverts, whatever it is. Make sure that you then test that these individuals have these skill sets. That's number 1. So that's what the number 1 thing that I'd always say. Never just say to somebody, I'm looking for someone, any recommendations, and you hire them, because 2 weeks later you'd figure out that because you've hired a personal assistant that was for a photographer and you're a baker, yes, the person might have personal assistant, but doesn't mean that their skill sets match because they were specifically working or their knowledge base is being a photographer, is as a photographer's assistant. So that's the rule 101 that I would give you. I have a question here that I wanted to answer. Let me see something. I'm just scrolling through before I forget, I just wanted to answer it. So Ayodele said, Fade, what is your preference in terms of getting approached for a possible partnership or collaboration? I'm good with an email. Just fade@bookingsafrica.com. Send me an email, but I need to know the value and I need to know that you've thought it through. Because a lot of the times when people want a partnership or a collaboration, it's to benefit them. They don't really highlight what's in it for me. And that's just how human beings are. Sorry, we're a bit selfish. If you're not going to sell why I should want to collaborate with you and why I'm better collaborating with you, that would help me achieve my goals, that whatever goals I have, if I know that collaborating with you would fast track me to achieve those goals, then of course it would make sense for me to collaborate with you. But if you just say and collaborate with me and then, you know, you want me to follow you on social media and repost you, but there's nothing in it for me, it wouldn't really catch my attention. So as long as the collaboration is mutually beneficial, shoot me an email. So that was how I started in my first round of actually hiring my personal assistant. I always make sure I tested them about on 10 different skill sets. And like I said, all of that you can watch on Fado Ogunro's personal assistant search on YouTube. And there's then after that, I did the same thing when I was hiring my Bookings Africa staff. However, I actually haven't edited that. I have a whole hard drive of the whole process. I need to look for that hard drive and get somebody to edit that. That would be fun. So it should actually be season 2 of my assistant search, but I was looking for an office manager. And in the end, I actually found Akumah, Uzo Akumah, who is Onyeka's sister. So the winner of season 2 of my assistant search is actually now my head of digital communications. And she's been with me since the beginning of Bookings Africa, then since I think, 2019, before we went live, Uzo's been with me. So the process of me hiring her as well, you could also hope maybe one of these days, but before the end of the year, I'll post that up on the Bookings Africa YouTube page very, very soon. Okay, so after I hired Uzo, so let me backtrack. I hired a girl called, I really can't remember her name, Retta. I hired Retta, and then Retta left because she wanted to work she got a better offer, and I couldn't afford her pay because at this time I was still raising funds and she wanted a higher salary. And one, she didn't have the skill sets enough for me to say I'll give you equity in the business, so it wasn't enticing. And two, I hadn't raised funds for me that I could afford to pay her salary. I'd been paying her salary out of the savings that I'd had throughout the 5 years working at BTFM and also on running my production company. So she wanted to leave and I had to let her go. And after that, that's when I called Uzo and I said, right, there's a job opening and now could you work for me? And she said, of course. So that's how I got Uzo on board. Then I've got Mojuba still on my team, Uzo's on my team. Then I went to South Africa and Kenya. Now the hiring process for that was pretty much the same as well. I put out on social media that I needed a country manager and these were the skill sets that I'm looking for. So when I went to South Africa, I didn't have the time because I was there for literally like 2 or 3 days. I didn't have the time to test 20 people and tell them to come back and shortlist them and test. And so I got their CVs and I spoke to them before I even went to South Africa and Kenya. And when I had the one-on-one meetings with those people that I'd shortlisted, I was very, very in-depth. Each interview was about 2.5 hours long. I was very in-depth in getting them to explain and highlight the skill sets that I was after that was important to me. They had to give me past references and past instances as to when they were able to succeed and pivot and come up with solutions on the spot. And I give a scenario plan as well, which I think is quite good if you don't have the time to hire to do like a week-long or 2-week-long hiring process where you shortlist and tell people to come back if you have only one chance to see them. So I scenario plan and I say, right, so if you were in this sort of a situation, and obviously as a country manager, if you had this situation and that situation and this went wrong and that went wrong, what would you do? So I always want them to give me their answer because it shows me how analytical they think, what their reasoning is. You get to really understand somebody's psyche by getting them to scenario plan. And a lot of times as well, it's about energy. You might be professional what you're doing, but if I feel like that's where your company culture comes in as well. So I want people that are energetic, full of life, that I know that if I say we've got to work for 24 hours or we've got to do this, they're not going to complain. They're going to. So I actually hired an older gentleman. He was in his 50s, 60s. He was a group consultant. Then I hired a country manager in South Africa. Then I hired a country manager and business development manager in Kenya. So I had 4 members of staff. And within a month, so once I hired everybody in September, I invited them to come to Nigeria in October. And the older gentleman was the only one that couldn't make it. And this was all expense paid trip on me. They came to Nigeria, paid for their flights, their accommodation, their per diem, everything. It was an induction session because they all needed to get training. Now, in this period, only 3 of them were able to make it. The 4th gentleman, the older guy, Dr. Adrian, wasn't able to make it. His passport wasn't out on time. He didn't know how to apply for a visa. So all of these nitty-gritty things, and he was the person that was meant to be the most experienced. And I was like, you're the one that's told me on your CV that you've worked in Nigeria, you've worked in South Africa, you've worked in Egypt, you've worked here. And you're telling me that you're asking me what the process is to fill out a visa application? Boy, bye. Best believe, as soon as the induction was over and everybody went back to South Africa and Kenya, he got an email terminating his contract effective immediately. So because I figured that the team that I had could actually execute everything that I needed. So he was just dead weight. So I let him go really quickly. And that's, we're talking about October, November last year. So that wasn't even that long ago. So now, if not for the COVID, could we all mute ourselves, please? If not for the COVID, I would, okay. If not for the COVID, I would actually be in the process of hiring staff in in Ghana and in Ivory Coast. Now that's going to be a bit tricky because the country manager that I'm going to need for Ivory Coast has to be bilingual, French and English speaking. So that's going to be a new hurdle that I'm going to have to overcome. I've got, right now, my team consists of, in Nigeria, it's myself, my operations manager, my head of digital and communications, Uzo. Then you've got my head of tech, Simi. And then you've got all the 4 other developers that work under Simi. Then you've got Kwamile, who's also my strategy director. So that's about 9 of us. Then in South Africa, you've got Tashik, who's the country manager. And in Kenya, you've got Sada, who's the country manager, and you've got Eric, who's the business development manager. So that's about a staff of about 12. And of course, including me, I believe that's about 13. So it's interesting juggling, speaking with them because they're all working in different time zones. South Kenya is 2 hours ahead of us. South Africa's an hour ahead of us. It's crazy because when I'm in LA for meetings, the time difference between LA and Kenya is 12 hours. So sometimes I could have a 3 p.m. call with somebody in Kenya or with my staff in Kenya, and that's 3 a.m. in LA. So, and I have a 7 o'clock meeting in LA time. So sometimes, you know, it seems the life of a CEO is all glitz and glam as an entrepreneur, but it's actually a lot more strenuous. But you've got to focus on your purpose. Remember, the key word was purpose over popularity. So I really just have to keep focusing on, what am I doing this for? What is the purpose of Bookings Africa? Yes, it was a God-given idea, but it's actually to fulfill a need, which is to enable people to create more jobs, add more value to the gig economy, allow freelancers expose and market themselves and get booked without getting cheated. And even taking that further, if you watched the episode on Tuesday, the masterclass on Tuesday, the tech that we've set up with Bookings Africa also enables you to automate and keep records of your bookkeeping. So that way, in the long run, when you want to go to a bank for a loan at any financial institution, they're always going to ask for a 1-year record of your entire bookkeeping. Now, majority of us freelancers or, giggers, MSMEs, we don't tend to think of that. As long as our client has paid us, we're all good. You haven't sent in the receipt, you haven't sent them an invoice, you don't have any record of that. So Bookings Africa takes that headache off of you, and everything is automated. So that's pretty much my experience when it comes to hiring. I've kind of given you the highlights, lowlights. If you do have any questions, let me know. It's 4 minutes past 7. I want to wrap this up by 15:15, so I'm not keeping you guys for too long. Who else do I have? I'm just going to read a couple of comments. G5, I love Akumah knowing that she's got entrepreneurial spirit and skills, even as she's also in the entertainment industry as I am. Go girl! Merit, Fade of Bookings Africa, don't be modest, you're fearless. Some bold moves you've made, Fade, thank you. Merit, subscribed. Fade, your mom is here too. My mom is where? She's subscribed to my page, who knows? My mom likes to stalk me on social media. Fumilayo says, thank you again so much for these sessions. I'm loving them. Who else do I have? Emeka says, assistant search. I learned a lot shooting this. So Emeka, if you actually read his comment, he was actually the videographer that shot the assistant search. And at the time, he was just a photographer. And I said to him, I want to push your skills. If you're a photographer, let's see what you can do as a videographer, right? So he actually helped me film that. And I think, did you edit that as well? I'm not too sure. But thank you, Emeka. You've been working with me, for me so diligently for over about a decade now. And I really do appreciate your loyalty. Selfa says, Fade, have you had instances where someone impressed you during the interview, passed all the tests, and you hired them, but when it came to the performance and delivery, they didn't do well on the job? No. Because if I'm hiring you in Nigeria, my tests are quite rigorous and they will take you through the ropes. So I will already know what you can deliver. So if you under deliver when I hire you, that is out of choice, not because of your capabilities. And that deserves either a reprimand. I'll warn you, but if you don't, and when I hire people as well, I always put them on a 6-month contract. I don't give them a full-time employment contract. So you're like a freelancer almost for like 6 months. And once you prove yourself, then you become a full-time employee. So if I need to terminate your contract at any time, it can be done so effective immediately. Boop, that part. Precious, when you were hiring the team, had you raised funds already? Yes, when I was hiring my South African and Kenyan team, that was exactly why I needed to raise funds, because in my business model that I'd mapped out by the platform capital, because it's Bookings Africa, the plan was to be all across Africa and not just in Nigeria. The website that I launched in Nigeria was just a beta testing site. So when we started getting revenue through that site, I was able to approach Dr. Toye of Platform Capital and say, right, this is what Bookings Africa has done. Now we want to expand to 2 other countries, and we want to build our app. So the funds that I received from the Platform Capital was to enable me build my app, enable me hire my team. Then also, of course, I need to travel, I need to pay for my flights, accommodation, pay myself. So yes, that was sort of hiring staff outside of Nigeria after I'd received my funds. Is the country manager in SA working alone? Yes, he is. But I actually believe Bookings Africa, we're like a family. We're all in a WhatsApp group together. We're all in a Skype group together. We speak to each other daily. We have like a great reporting system as well. So every day I have a checklist of what everybody's doing. And that's Motupe's job as the operations manager. She needs to ensure that everybody is operating optimally. They need to be doing what they're doing, and we have a checklist. Every week, everybody has their own to-do list. So Monday through to Friday, what is everybody doing and are they doing it? So it's great. That's the only way you can expand and scale your team, if you know that everybody's working effectively, because otherwise as a CEO, you just get overwhelmed. If you have a staff of 100 and you don't have a reporting system that enables you to keep in check on top of what everybody's doing, you're going to forget. One person might say you have a 3 o'clock meeting. Another person might say they want to have a 1 o'clock meeting with you, and you have 200 people telling you that they want to meet you and they want to do this and they've set up a meeting here. You're not going to remember. So you need to have a structured system that allows the flow and just allows the business to keep on ticking on autopilot. When am I coming to Botswana? Pretty soon. So what other questions do we have? Any WhatsApp platform for the participants? For participants of this session, if you are interested in joining our newsletter or getting WhatsApp updates, please send us an email and we will do that. Emeka, I appreciate you, Fade. You made me take videography more seriously, and it's paid off. Talk about upskilling. I'm sure you make more money from your videography than your photography now, Emeka. So Emeka pivoted and he upskilled himself. So now he's a photographer and a videographer, and he's earning a lot more money as well from having those 2 skill sets and not just sticking to one. So Ayodele says, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. What's my email? Fade@bookingsafrica.com. Okay, so it's 7:10. I think we are about to wrap up this session for today. I hope you guys managed to learn some information about what to do when you're hiring. who to hire, when to hire. Thank you so much to Onyeka Akumah, who was able to share a lot of insight about his experience when it comes to hiring his team, pitfalls to look out for, when to get a co-founder, the type of co-founder that you should look out for. And the keyword also that I didn't highlight earlier on is organogram. I'm going to type it out here. If you've never heard of it, you should just Google it. Organogram, it's the structure, organogram. It's the structure of hiring of a team building. Who is in your team? So when you're speaking to investors, they're going to say, what's your organogram? Maybe did I spell that right? Organogram? Yeah, I think so. Who's in your team? And they want to see your team structure. And that's where the organogram comes in. So make sure you look up that buzzword if you've never heard of it, and also include that in your business model. So we're about to wrap up today. Thank you once again for everybody who's been with us since 5 o'clock. Tomorrow is our final session. Gosh, the whole week has flown by. Tomorrow we will be discussing the final, crossing your T's and dotting your I's, the final checklist. And that is registering your business. Do you need a business name or do you need to be a limited liability company? What's the difference? Are there difference in taxes if you are just registered as a business name or as a corporate body? Can we do all our taxes online as entrepreneurs? And as a freelancer, if I'm just a makeup artist and somebody gives me 20K to do makeup and I put it in my pocket, why do I need to pay my tax from that? What benefit will I get in the next, 10 years or so? I mean, I would like to just keep as much money as I can, right? So what exactly is the importance of paying your taxes when you're thinking in terms of being an entrepreneur and growing your business from being a freelancer to a business, to a corporation, to an institution? There's some certain legal and also there's accountability. So basically the compliance, corporate governance, that's everything that we're going to go over. And as always, I like to give you guys my guests first. I tell you guys my guests before I share it on social media tomorrow. So we should be having, fingers crossed, a representative from LIRS who will be telling us exactly the importance of paying our taxes, how to do so, and what tax bracket entrepreneurs fall under. And then also we'll be talking to a lawyer who will be telling us the importance of having an NDA, MOU, what they all mean, registering your business, registering your trademark, copyrights. Do you even need that? What the importance of all that is, because all of that helps to protect the business. I should also let you know, finally, that if you are going down the investors route, investors will not give you money unless you're a limited liability company. Because if you're registered as a business name, and most lawyers as an entrepreneur will tell you to get registered as a business name because it's cheaper, it's faster. I don't dispute that. However, and I'll go more in depth into this. I'll go in depth into this tomorrow. But if you are a business name, it means you're a sole proprietor. That means you're the only owner of that business. So how can you sell shares? And then if you're a limited liability company, that means you have shares and stock options, right? So you can't sell shares of your company if you're a business name, because being a business name means automatically you can be the only owner of that business. So that means if you're going to have shareholders, you need to have a limited liability company. So a venture capitalist or any investor would not invest in the business unless it's like you're bootstrapping your friends, family, angel investors, and that's more just like loans. But if somebody's going to get equity in your business, you need to be registered as a limited liability company and not a business name. So on that note, we will talk more about that tomorrow. I'm hoping that you guys are finding this series interesting. I'd also like to know, apart from entrepreneurship, if you guys have any other topics outside of entrepreneurship that you specifically are interested in. It could be mental health, it could be fitness, it could be having kids, it could be whatever it is. Let me know, because I'd always like to impact you in any way possible and get the right speakers on board. And it's just, I think that they're going to extend the lockdown, so it's good for us to think beyond entrepreneurship. What are the topics that might be useful to my Bookings Africa family? I would love to help you guys enlighten and shed some light on anything that you need help with. We will be sending, as always, we'll be sending out a survey via SurveyMonkey. So in the next 15 minutes, once we're done with this quick session, then you'll be receiving an email. Please fill out the survey. As like I said, it always enables us to improve your experience. It allows us to know what exactly you're thinking, what you want to gain from this, so we can always tailor make the information to suit you. The more information you provide on the survey, the better we can provide for you. On that note, thank you very much to everyone. My name is Fade Ogunro. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Fade Ogunro on all my social media, and also on LinkedIn. If you are serious and you want to get in contact with me regarding anything entrepreneurship or business or investment, my LinkedIn profile is where I do a lot of my corporate business networking, and also my personal email, which I've mentioned, fade@bookingsafrica.com. Follow me on social media, follow Bookings Africa, download the app, sign up, and I will be here same time tomorrow with our final masterclass of the week. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Ciao.